Friends, before I begin my sermon, I want to acknowledge that today's service and my sermon are built around the metaphor of pilgrimage and journey and walking, and that these images can privilege some bodies and abilities over others. And I want to just, offer an invitation to all of us into the broadest possible understanding of these metaphors. We are all pilgrims. We're all on the journey. And I offer this sermon in that spirit, even as I am true to my own experience and the insights that I've drawn from it. On the northwest coast of Spain, in the province of Galicia, or as they say in Spain, Galicia, there is a small finger of land that juts out into the North Atlantic Ocean, a rugged, rocky mound battered by wind and sea. The Spaniards call this place Finisterre, which comes from the Latin finis, end, and terre, world, the end of the world. You see, the ancient inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula believed Finisterre to be the westernmost point of the continent and therefore literally the end of the known world. And to be sure, Finisterre doesn't disappoint the apocalyptic imagination. To walk out on that spit of land even today is to be buffeted by winds strong enough to knock you over, to look out from vertigo-inducing cliffs over a vast and churning sea. Sailors have long called this forbidding coastline the Costa de Muerte, for all the lives lost here to shipwreck. Long before Christians began making pilgrimages to nearby Santiago de Compostela, the Celts and the ancient Iberians before them made their pilgrimages here to Finisterre. They journeyed to this place they believed to be the end of the world. And as they watched the sun slip below the watery horizon into the void, they prayed. They prayed that the sun wouldn't abandon them. They prayed for the sun's return. From great slabs of rock, they built altars to the sun, altars that remain to this day and that bear witness to the fact that our ancestors found spiritual significance in this act of confronting the end of the world as they knew it. It must have taken courage, no, for these ancestors to have journeyed to this forbidding place, to confront the frightening possibility of the end of the world and the mystery beyond the limits of their knowing. We face these same enigmas today, don't we? And it still takes courage to confront them. I've just returned from Finisterre. For the last 2 weeks, me and 24 others from our church and some neighboring churches made a pilgrimage along the Camino de Santiago. But instead of ending our journey in Santiago de Compostela, which most people do, we began there and walked the 100 or so kilometers from there to Finisterre. Many of us were grappling with endings in our own lives. Major life transitions, lost relationships, lost jobs. One of us walked with the ashes of her recently departed mother. Another wrestled with grief over his father's death. I was mourning the recent and sudden death of my friend Judy, who first introduced me to the practice of pilgrimage, and with whom I'd once walked to Finisterre. In Judy's memory, I carried with me a scallop shell, the pilgrim's symbol. And when I finally made it to the cliff top at the end, I laid it down at sunset and said goodbye to my friend. Each pilgrim takes to the road for different and deeply personal reasons. Each of us had something in our souls that needed to be worked through. And there's something about walking that, for me at least, helps my soul do that working through. The simple act, for some not so simple, of placing one foot in front of the other over and over again, nothing more to do but that, frees up my mind and soul to do their work. Work out your salvation with diligence, said the Buddha, who himself took to the woods as a wayfarer, a wanderer, a pilgrim in his own right. That's what it seemed each of us was doing on this pilgrimage, working out our own salvation, as it were. This is a profoundly personal and sometimes lonely journey, and there's a sense in which every pilgrim walks alone. Yet in another sense, the pilgrim is never alone. We were joined on the Camino by pilgrims from all over the world, and though we all spoke different languages, we always greeted one another with the same words: Buen camino. Our little group from Boston began and ended each day with a shared meal, and each night before dinner we gathered to sing and pray and share our experience from the Camino that day. And so what could have been a lonely journey was instead a warm and companionable one, full of laughter and song. In fact, each night we sang a simple song that reminded us that we were not alone on our journey, that reminded us that we accompanied one another on the journey. It's just a simple song that goes, walking, walking with you is my prayer. A mantra, a reminder that even when it seems like we're alone with our struggles, we don't walk alone. We walk together. We are wayfaring strangers, perhaps, but also wayfaring friends. Isn't this what we hope for in our lives? To be in good company as we make the sometimes difficult journey of life? Isn't that what first brought us into religious community? Something drew us through those doors for the first time, right? Or the doors of another church. Something deeply personal, perhaps, a question, a crisis, a longing, a need. And we brought our hopes and struggles to the church because we had an intuition. We intuited that it would be better for us not to wrestle with those questions and grapple with those struggles by ourselves. By coming here, we chose instead to walk our own spiritual path in the company of others, so we could support and guide one another, offer solace and companionship, learn from one another, pick one another up when we stumble and fall. We don't all have to think alike or believe alike. There are many journeys, but there's one path, and we walk it together. Walking with you is my prayer. A few years back, I was at a gathering of ministers and had the opportunity to hear a talk by Thomas More, the author of Care of the Soul. More is one of the great and wise spiritual writers of our time. Speaking to our group of ministers about the care of souls, More said something that struck me. He said, all the great literature on the soul shows that the one thing the soul needs most, more than a prayer, more than a practice, is a friend. What the soul needs most is a friend. I hope and pray that this is what we can offer one another here at church. Friendship, soul friendship, accompaniment, care. We make our own journey, but we can't journey alone. We are wayfaring strangers and wayfaring friends. What else did the journey to the end of the world teach me? I want to just offer a couple of final thoughts on how we might think about our own journey to the end of the world as we know it. I was reminded on this pilgrimage to allow myself to be held by the earth. When we consistently move across the face of the good earth at the pace of our own footfall, and not from a speeding car, we transform our relationship to time, space, and earth. I began to feel and to trust that the point of contact between the bottoms of my feet and the surface of the earth, that there was strength there, and intimacy with the creation all around me, the smell of eucalyptus and Galician pine, the bright colors of foxglove and Scotch broom, the songs of warblers and the lowing of cattle. It's true that when we finally arrived at the coast of Finisterre, the buffeting winds and the vast sea made me feel small and powerless. But I also felt a part of it all, enlarged. I want to carry that ample sense of self, that intimate relationship with the earth, with me, into whatever the future may bring. The journey also reminded me that sometimes what we fear is the end of the world is not. When the ancients came to Finisterre, they weren't, in fact, at the end of the world. It was just the end of the world as they knew it, as they thought it to be. Other possibilities lay beyond, possibilities they hadn't yet imagined. It makes me wonder how the apocalyptic stories that we tell one another might serve to limit our moral imagination. I'm not suggesting we be complacent in the face of the crises that are before us. I'm suggesting that perhaps we need a new life-giving vision. Which leads me to my final thought. When pilgrims arrive at Finisterre, having completed their journeys, the tradition is to gather on the rocks at the furthest tip of that spit of land, surrounded by crashing seas on three sides, and watch the sun set into the horizon. And so that's what we did. The sun didn't set till 10 p.m. last week. But by that time of the night, the wind had abated such that a calm prevailed. The moon was already rising at our backs in the east, and the setting sun lit up the entire western sky. The ocean sparkled with its reflection. Everyone was silent and a little bit in awe. It was beautiful. And in that moment, I thought again about those ancient ancestors making their journey to what they believed was the end of the world. The fear and trepidation they must have felt, the courage and strength it took for them to make that journey. And I wondered if it came as a surprise to them to discover that the end of the world was beautiful, a place of beauty. And it made me wonder if we too don't have a beautiful surprise before us. I wonder if we or our children's children will one day discover that the endings we now anticipate for our own lives and for our world are also beautiful new beginnings. Beginnings full of possibilities that lie beyond the limits of our present imagination. I don't know that to be true, but having journeyed now to the end of the world, I do hold it as a possibility. And I offer that possibility to you and your imagination with love. Amen.